this concept of neuroplasticity and being able to actually change, alter, improve those actual brain pathways. And just like the physical rep of pedaling the bike or pumping the weight in the gym, the more you do it, the more that pathway gets grooved in.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. Some of you may recognize the name Brent Bookwalter because he's a 2016 Olympian, 16-year veteran of professional cycling, and his career was defined by grit, tenacity, and world-class collaboration. I've known Brent since he was racing in college, but he went all the way to the top levels of the sport, being a member of Cadel Evans' 2011 Tour de France winning team. And Brent even earned podium finishes at premier stage races globally before he retired in 2021 to the Asheville area. His career began, as I mentioned, in the collegiate ranks, where he was a 9-time national champion while earning his degree in biology from Lees-McRae College. And he blends that high-level experience today with academic rigor with his master's degree in sports psychology from Adams State University. And he works as a TV analyst for NBC and Peacock with their Tour de France coverage. He is now a mental performance coach and helps athletes and business leaders optimize habits and strengthen their mental game. And today we're going to dive into how you can use the same types of strategies to help get the best out of your sports performance, your business, and your life. Brent, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here and catching up off the trails on the mics. But yeah, nice to see you in this other setting.
Yeah, we can't do this on bikes because you'd probably be okay talking, but I'd be huffing and puffing, so I could get like a couple questions out, and I just have to let you go on that. But maybe that's a good idea for the next podcast. But no, Brent, I remember first time we met, you were still in college at Lees-McRae. Was at a race in Tennessee. I watched you ride up the road, up Roan Mountain. But you've had an amazing, Roan grown, exactly. You were probably like 19 or 20 at the time, and I was in my 30s at that point. So, I'll say that's why I was slower. But no, Brent, you've had an amazing journey in your life. I know now we're going to be talking a lot about the mental side of performance and how, not only athletes, but also people, like myself that are business owners, that are professionals, can also benefit, from the like your clients and the people that you work with. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story as a professional cyclist and, what led you up to this point.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try to give you the abbreviated version. So, when I was younger, I started racing bikes, like playing other sports too. I played football and downhill ski raced in Michigan, but really fell in love with riding and racing bikes and worked my way up through the ranks from a beginner kid in Michigan to the kind of junior national team level, and went on to race it collegiately at Lees-McRae College, which is what brought me down here to be your neighbor here in North Carolina. And yeah, I always loved mountain biking. During my collegiate years, I slowly transitioned into road racing, largely due to just opportunity. There was less spot and less opportunity to race at the best level in the world on the mountain bike as there was on the road. And yeah, sort of was fortunate also to still have a lot of good support from where I grew up back in Michigan. There was a professional road team coming onto the scene at the time, the team that eventually became the Team Bissell Professional Cycling Team.
Yeah.
That was my hometown team. It was a professional team. And I went begrudgingly. I didn't really want to. I went kicking and screaming. I wanted to stay in the mountain bike with my bros. But I grew to love it. I grew to love the teamwork and the camaraderie, and also the tactics and the strategy. And yeah, eventually switched over. And by the time I graduated from Lees-McRae with my biology degree, I was at the level where I was really knocking on the door of being a professional and making a living riding bikes. Some of the best teams in the world were courting me, and I was doing some testing with them. The Discovery Channel team was one of them. But the year after I graduated, I had this pretty traumatic lower leg fracture. I was racing in Belgium and karate kicked this light pole, and my tibia just, basically blew up. And the doctors weren't sure if they were going to really even be able to save my leg or get me back up to a good level of walking and functioning, much less racing bikes. So, I was right on the door, right poised to like walk through this gateway and sort of realize my dream of being a pro bike racer. And it was all sort of put in jeopardy and really almost taken away. So
Yeah.
that was like the first real pivotal moment in my cycling career, and that I had to rebuild from the ground up. And really that experience me, I think, two of the big lessons and takeaways from pro cycling, and that performance has to be done with a team, and that we can't ignore the role of the mind and our
Yeah.
mental strength and performance. And
Yeah.
that was my big takeaway from that experience. And my recovery was only possible because of this personal team that I had assembled and built around myself and had been built around me. And then this appreciation of this process focus, letting go of the outcome, was cemented during this time as well, because I could control so little.
Yeah.
I wasn't even walking, much less riding a bike. But I was very fortunate to recover, make full recovery, and be part of the BMC racing team as they got up and running. And they took a chance on me and gambled, and I was able to grow with them. And within, what was it, like within 4 years, we won the Tour de France with Cadel
Incredible.
Evans, and I was
Yeah.
part of that
Cadel
team.
Evans. 2011.
2011,
Yeah.
yeah.
Incredible.
Yes. It was yeah, that sort of snapshot was a big first part of my sort of journey and evolution as an athlete. And then yeah, there were different chapters to come after that. That early part of my career, I was largely just a teammate. I say just kind of with parentheses here. Because a teammate at a professional level, a domestique, is not a job to be taken lightly. You can make a
Yeah.
decent living doing it, and to be part of winning some of the best races in the world, like the Tour de France, was really rewarding and fulfilling. But I also realized at the time, and I say I realized, was also told that the team sort of told me also that that wasn't enough. Like to have an existence at the top level of the sport, it wasn't enough just to be a teammate.
Wow.
Also, at that time, I had missed out on the Olympic selection for the U.S.
Mm.
team in London. So the combination of those two forces were kind of the next pivotal sort of transition in my career, and that I had to figure out what was important to me, why, and if it was important to stay alive, to be an Olympian, I was going to have to figure out how to win. And really, that ultimately led me to this my career after cycling now in performance coaching.
Yeah.
It really started at this time. This was the first period where I began to work with a sports psychologist and really understand my mentality, the different attributes of my mental strength, and work on them deliberately.
Yeah.
And it did transform. It transformed the rest of my career, which is why I'm so passionate about it to today. So
Yeah.
yeah, I raced professionally through 2021, and yeah, now here I am a few years out of it, father of two, and very proud Ashevillean alongside you. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the
And a wonderful wife, wonderful family. And
thanks.
I want to
Very, very
underscore,
much so.
yeah, and I want to underscore, you and your wife are awesome. You also have a nonprofit that you guys run. Before we dive into kind of more of the business side, Brent, I'd love for you to share a little bit about that with the audience too.
Yeah, yeah, we've been involved and founded a couple nonprofits as we've lived in Nashville. The first one was the Bookwalter Binge, uh, which was it was a nonprofit Grand Fondo cycling event that no longer takes place. I'd say it's still on hold. It's not totally shut down. I have dreams of bringing it back, but yeah, the Bookwalter Binge. My wife Jamie, she basically was the one creating and founding that to keep us connected to this Asheville community when we were
Yeah,
living in Europe for much of my pro racing career. And
yeah,
our causes that we most aligned for through the binge were environmental, conservationalist, and naturalist
yeah,
causes. Southern Appalachian Highland Conservancy, a key source of our fundraising and inspiration, and really like tied us into this community and these mountains that we love even more. So
yeah,
this I'm so grateful to call this area the Blue Ridge Mountains home, and it's provided so much inspiration to me. So to give back and be connected with that on a deeper level was really fulfilling, and it's also yeah influenced our community and connecting to individuals such as you. So that's one of them. And then more recently, after Hurricane Helene, we founded Rebuild Black Mountain,
mm,
which is a nonprofit
yeah,
to support some of the sustainability and recovery efforts following Helene, with the idea being restoring some of the natural spaces and shared spaces that were damaged, not just to the level that they were before the hurricane, but to a sustainable way that it's even better than before. And I think, yeah, we're all going through various levels of recovery after that crazy time in the hurricane here in the Asheville area, but we are starting to see that we are getting glimpses of little pockets or businesses or trails or mountainsides that you could argue like, oh, like this is something new here that wasn't here before, or we
Yeah.
did rebuild it and it's even better than before. So yeah, putting the positive rosy lens tint on that experience has been good to do that nonprofit Rebuild Black Mountain as well.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it in the area, and you bring the Bookwalter binge back. We'll continue to support it as well, Brent. But yeah, we saw the same thing when with our nonprofit after Helene. Just the amazing way the community pulled together. There's an amazing resilience and just a sense of community here in Asheville that you guys are obviously a part of as well. So thank you for that. But obviously the shared experience in cycling, you obviously at a different level. I can appreciate, it's such a mentally tough sport. And I'll never forget, I was 19 at the time. I forget who gave it to me or where I picked it up, but I read my first book on mental performance and learned about, meditation and visualization and, started to implement a lot of those practices. And then I use the same types of techniques when I was in sales because, again, like you get a lot of rejection. That's the one thing about cycling. And to be fair, you called yourself a domestique. You were super domestique when you were out there, which people
Thanks.
in the sport know that. But I would love for you to just touch on that. Like cycling, I think is unique in a sense in that you lose even the champions lose such a large percentage of races. Like even for you, I think one of the best athletes to come out of the United States, in that last decade when you were racing, what percentage do you think of the races you actually won in your career? Just for the audience to
Oh,
kind of get a perspective.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need that stat because our
Yeah.
my son is 6 years old and he's very competitive
Yeah.
and he was having a hard time losing in something the other day. And my wife was trying to tell him, Waylon, do you know how many times your dad won over a period of like almost 20 years? And he was like, oh, how many times did you win? I'm like, I'm looking at my hands. It's like I can definitely count them with two hands. So,
Yeah.
we're racing 70 to 80 days a year. And a rider like myself was fortunate to win, a half dozen or a dozen times. So
Yeah.
on percentage over, 70 to 80 race day times 15, 20 years of a career, it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's
It's less than
so much
1%.
defeat.
Yeah.
It's way less than 1%.
Yeah.
Which is why this understanding of what I was after during that time, what was important to me, what my
Yeah.
values were, and that extending beyond the outcome and the result
Yeah.
was so important. And then developing some strategies that supported me and served me in that way because it's a
Yeah.
lonely, miserable place. You're continuously evaluating yourself on the result of every race, which is largely what the cutthroat element of professional sport and professional cycling does. Like you're
Yeah.
only as good as your last
Yeah.
race. So it's tough to survive and it's tough to stay alive and
Yeah.
it's tough to stay motivated. But for me, so much of it just came back to the joy and the love of riding. Like I
Yeah.
loved riding my bike and I still do really, really love it. And that transcended, all the terrible statistics on winning.
Yeah. No, that's well, you say they're terrible, but at the same time, it's all relative with respect to that. So let's talk about, what is mental performance? Like what is mental performance coaching? Because I think, some people are like, yeah, I know what that is. People have seen Billions, they know who Wendy is on that show, and they're like,
Hmm.
I've worked with, some people would call her a therapist, but I would call her my mental performance coach as well.
Hmm.
As you go through challenging times in life, like what is mental performance? What is mental performance coaching, Brent?
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that there's a lot of individuality and context in here, like most
Yeah.
layers of performance, but essentially it's approaching and training and deliberately and intentionally training and working on our mind, the mental aspects of performance in a similar or the same way that we do our physical. So everyone can relate to going to the gym or going out to the roads and running a mile. And the reps matter. The success, the improvement, it doesn't just happen accidentally. We
Right.
don't just stumble into it.
Yeah.
So when we talk about our mind, through the physical reps, we do get some natural built-in mental training, some mental
Mm.
rehearsal. We often develop our own techniques, and that's great. And we're not trying to get rid of that. We're not trying to completely destroy that or replace that, but we're trying to create an efficiency and a productiveness and an intentionality with our mind, same way that you do with a well-designed physical training program.
Yeah, and I love the research that's out there. Like I'll see stuff on my social media feeds that talks about like those people that are optimists versus pessimists and how they're
Mm,
actually healthier and their brains are different. But it actually, the way we think, we're creating pathways in our brain. Just like, if you're, like being on a bike, if you are using the proper technique in your pedal stroke over and over and over again, you're conditioning your body and your muscles to that. Whereas if you're having the same thought process day in, day out, you can actually wear that pathway in your brain and do that. What are your thoughts on, being an optimist or a pessimist? I mean, you
mm,
talked about, I think Lindsey Vonn had a similar injury as you did, with the
hmm.
tibia here recently in the Olympics. And I watched her little social media clip and I was like, wow, like she's so positive about it, you know?
Yeah.
And you can see how that could so easily tip the other way. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on, that optimism versus pessimism?
Yeah, I think optimism, pessimism, there is some individuality here as
Yeah.
well. Like what's optimism, pessimism, or like in other research or literature, it's like a happiness set point.
Mm, yeah.
We acknowledge that not everyone is going to be the same, and
Yeah.
someone who has a little bit lower or different happiness set point, or like on the optimism, pessimism spectrum, that doesn't preclude them or guarantee excellence or success performance.
Yeah.
But like I think it's really important what you pointed out that when we talk about our mind and our thoughts and this relationship of what we think, how we feel, how that informs our actions, we have a high degree of control over that.
Mm,
And on, especially more recent science has armed us with this concept of neuroplasticity and being able to actually change, alter, improve
yeah.
those actual brain pathways. And just like the physical rep of pedaling the bike or pumping the
Yeah.
weight in the gym, yeah, the more you do it, the more that pathway gets grooved in. And that can work for you or it can work against you. So
Yeah.
to let it go to chance and let it happen accidentally is really missing a lot of what's available in terms of fulfilling and realizing your potential.
Yeah, no, I like how you frame that. And one of the things, some of my coaching clients, I've seen them go down, these pathways where it's like they're just in kind of this negative reinforcement pathway.
Mm,
And I say, hey, like trying to get them back on track to focus on some of the positive things. What are some of the techniques? Like, so for instance, I'll give myself as an example. Like coming out of Helene, I just lost my sister in a car crash. We were having some business challenges. Then Helene hit, and it just felt like every day was a struggle, Brent. For
hmm.
people that are going through those hard times, like you with your injury, it's just going to be, days, weeks, months of struggle before you can get back to that. What are some techniques that you work with your clients to employ to help shift or get through those really, really challenging periods?
Yeah, I think that, and this goes for kind of the larger landscape of mental training, mental performance.
Yeah.
Two of the sort of fundamental areas that I like to work within and prioritize are understanding internal organization and alignment of values of what's
Mm,
important to you. So
yeah.
recognizing that even during a tough time, even when we're up against it, we can still understand and have done that internal work of what really matters to me. Is it being a father? Is it being a steward in the community? Is it my athlete prowess, my PRs? Is it my paycheck? And and we don't have to have often we don't have just one. We don't just have one value or one thing that's
Right.
important to us. But
Yeah.
that the honesty and the clarity of even in challenge, understanding no, at the end of the day, this is what I hang my hat on. This was what really is really important. That's important to understand. It's the foundation of the actual sort of other mental skills and training, which shifts me to the sort of the next area that a lot of it is built around mindfulness and this pattern and this process of having some awareness, having some acceptance, and then finally, and very importantly, re-aiming our attention and our focus and our energy in areas, in ways, on processes that serve us in the moment. So
Yeah.
understanding that, whether it's we don't have to build this impenetrable fortress around us that
Mm.
we're never going to let the hard time get to us or get us down. We can be distracted, we can be scared, we can be overwhelmed, we can be worried. Those are all natural um, emotions and processes that we all go through and challenges that we face.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that we have the awareness of it, some acceptance for it, and then what are we doing now? Where are we going? Am I in my attention on I got to get out the door and just go for a walk to get moving?
Yeah.
For me personally, that's um movement is therapy for me. So
Yeah.
like and being in nature is so like when in doubt, I'm like, how can I move? How can I get myself outside?
Yeah.
And that really helps. And that aiming my attention and my effort in that way serves me. But an aiming of attention, we can, it can be instructional, it can be motivational, it can be internal, external, broad, narrow, a lot of different areas and realms of this. A lot of, that aligns with the work that I'm doing, with clients when we're talking about how to navigate these tough periods.
Yeah. You said some great things there. I mean, there's even a lot of great data now on, being outside in nature and how it does
Mm.
change your physiology. So I same way, like, I told you I was just walking right before, even though it's like 30 degrees out, it's still good to be out there and get a little
Crisp.
get a little fresh air, pet the
Absolutely.
dog. But you also said I read it was a monk, and the monk was recounting a conversation with somebody. I was like, how do you always stay so positive, and how do you not let these things bother you? And he said, I actually probably have more negative thoughts than you do. I just don't dwell on them and do that. So I like
Mm,
I like what you said, which is, you know, saying no, I can't ever have these thoughts or be scared or be anxious or be worried, or be afraid of failure. It's okay, but accepting that and being able to learn the strategies to get back to that state where you are moving forward and progressing is so important, and doing that. And that's where I found having that person to talk to like yourself that can work you through that period and say, hey, it's okay, this is normal, but this is how you can, get back on track
mm.
and do these things is very important. I loved when I was building sales teams in the medical device space. I loved hiring ex-military, specifically special forces, because they're really good at dealing with, intense challenges, incredibly challenging circumstances, but also elite athletes, college athletes, ex-pro athletes. They just know, they've been trained on how to deal with these challenges, delayed gratification. So I think, for those that are listening, they're like, this is all well and good, Brent. You're working with athletes and, you're chatting with that. But how does this apply to high performers in business, business owners, salespeople, doctors, other professionals out there, Brent? Where do you see similarities between the two groups, and how do these same principles apply?
Yeah, I think, it's not just the athlete experience.
Yeah.
To perform as the world's best is not so dissimilar that than it is performing in for your meeting or for the deadline that's due or for hitting that sales target. Whether it's the all the Olympians we were just watching the past few weeks, were so many great examples of distraction, of fear, of doubt, and how to manage it. Those
Yeah.
experiences and those emotions and this relationship of the thoughts, the feelings, and then the actions, that is the human experience that
Yeah.
is encountered when we're striving in a business sense, when we're pushing ourselves, we're trying to be our best, and we're up against those challenges. It's there's a lot of overlap, I think, with athletes, with performance, and that conversation around our best selves or excellence, if you will, or mastery. The venue doesn't doesn't really matter as much as how we approach it and the deliberateness, and that we're not just leaving it to chance and letting it happen accidentally. We're actually prepared to get the most out of ourselves with this mental aspect of this performance.
Yeah, I love that. And just I was watching the U.S. versus Canada hockey game with great interest.
Good
I
one.
love hockey. Grew up watching the Caps, but my wife's from Canada. You met my wife Jessica.
Hmm.
So I was like, it's always nice to see those teams duel at it. But I thought it was interesting that one of the Canadian hockey players at the end said, "Well, I'll let the public kind of judge who was the best team," but I found that very interesting because, you know, it's not who is the best team on paper. It's who is the
Mm,
best team in the moment. And what you just said, it doesn't really matter what the setting is. It matters like, are you getting the best out of who you are and what you have? And I've seen this with, we were talking about my older son, Ethan, before we started recording. He plays lacrosse. And we were at a tournament in New York, and there's this other kid on his team, which I mean, the kid had more physical talent. He's bigger, faster, stronger, just a phenomenal specimen. The kid, young kid, deadlifting like 315, just a beast.
wow.
But he fell apart mentally. And I was sitting there talking to his dad, and his dad was just like, he's like, I don't understand. He's just falling apart, mentally.
Hmm.
Even though he has on paper all these physical gifts. So
Yeah.
and I know in cycling, you've seen it. What are some examples of you've seen of individuals in business and athletics that have taken what they've given and outperformed, and what do they seem to have in common mentally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that was largely my experience as a developing bike rider. When I was a junior and I was young, I never won any junior national championship. I was like very happy to be in the top five. So I was not absolutely not the most talented. And, kind of passing through these different gauntlets and sort of like selections through my career,
Yeah,
you often saw that some of
yeah,
the world's best when they were young, they did survive and arrive and
yeah,
continue to be the world's best. Many of them would fall away, and
yeah,
there's this filtering of riders like myself that gaps. And I think some of the overlying or underlying like traits, qualities, are are a genuine love for the game,
yeah,
and what we're doing. So and that goes back to this and an understanding for it. So like understand why and what makes us tick, and that can be different. There's no like guaranteed slam dunk. When we talk about bike racing, I had teammates that were so fulfilled and found so much enjoyment and gratitude in slamming the set button and the interval and
yeah,
really just morphing and sculpting their body and pulling these little bits of themselves better and better each day to raise their threshold, to raise their output. And that allowed them to, create these performances come race day that were
yeah.
really amazing and maybe better than they ever thought possible. For me, it was more about, can I go see a new road? Can I go find a new
Mm.
climb? Like, how's it going to feel? Go over that.
Yeah.
Who am I with? Like, what
And
is the
and take
conversation
and
I'm
take
having with
Chris's KOM,
myself?
by the way, a couple times. But anyway,
Take them all. No, I don't have any anymore. They're all taken from me. But yeah, I think that the understanding and honesty of what makes us tick, and then
yeah,
also being students of it. The other thing I would definitely put in there, which I touched on in sort of my quick little crash course of my personal story, is
yeah,
this personal support team. I think when if you're a young athlete and you're the best in your league or the best in your grade or whatever it is, those athletes do often have great support.
yeah,
But it's not as important because they're propped up by a natural sort of talent and ability. For me and
yeah,
many of my peers that maybe weren't the best ever junior U23 level, um, in order for me to even get to the professional level, I really had to like build the structure around me and really prop myself in all these different ways,
yeah.
often strategically and intentionally. So that utilization and implementation of support team is a big one.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important, because what I've seen, you and I have seen this, when I was racing as a junior, these guys, I mean, they were just way more talented than me,
Mm,
and then they just faded away, and I do have a concern with some of these younger athletes that I watch that are so good, and they're just getting by on pure talent, whether it's physical, like physical size or just physical ability, but what they're facing is actually, in my opinion, more challenging than those that are like you, or maybe like my son, whereas they're not at the top level. They have the ability, but they're having to build the systems in every different area because those that are at the
mm,
top, they're just losing more as everybody catches up around them. And what I see is
yeah.
those are the ones that crack mentally and they end up getting burnt out and quitting because like I was a great student in high school and I got by, it was pretty easy for me. And then I get to Virginia Tech and engineering and I realized like I'm not like one of the smartest in the class. I'm actually one of the least smart in the class. And I didn't have the
At work
skills on
now.
how to study. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
took me it took me 2 years to really learn all those skills and it was really hard to do that. Whereas if I had to struggle a little bit earlier on in my life, it would have been easier through that. Any thoughts to add with respect to that?
Yeah, I think the development of youth athletes is like prime time front and center there. And I think
Yeah.
there it's challenging to if you are one of the best, that's not to say like you're doomed and you're not going to find or create any
Yeah.
longevity in your
Yeah.
space or your sport. But I think once again it goes back to this intentionally designed and deliberate process of yeah, how are we putting it together? What do we have around us? And really like just the continuous coming back to of like why are we doing this? So yeah, like winning is addicting and it is fun, but is that the only reason? Do you love the winning or do you also love playing? And I'm
Right.
not saying
Yeah.
winning doesn't matter. We can value it and that's
Yeah.
important and we can use it as fire and motivation.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's very powerful. But but yeah, I think yeah, continuously going back to the understanding of self and
Yeah.
why we're here, what we're getting from it, and what's important to us is
Yeah.
really important. And that also serves us really well as we kind of go like up this mental skills pyramid and we get,
Yeah.
higher up there and it becomes an issue of fortitude and grit and persistence in really tough moments. That's only going to have been possible if we've done the foundational work underneath
Yeah.
that props up that higher stuff further up the
Yeah.
ladder.
I love that. And you mentioned grit. I love Michelle Duckworth's book, Grit, because she talks about, specifically for those younger individuals, whether it's, being a musician or athlete or, anything, it comes down and she talks about that identity. Like, what do they see
Hmm.
themselves as versus just, looking at their performance, which can be highly variable and doing that. And that, that's her research said that was the number one predictor of long-term success for those young individuals, which can be very powerful. Now, Brent, I know you work with a lot of athletes, but as we were talking about, like I know for a fact, professionals can benefit from this. If people are
Hmm.
listening and say, "Hey, I want to reach out to you, Brent. I want to get access to your resources. I'd like to have a call to see, how potentially you can help me achieve my highest level." What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can email me, brentbookwalter@gmail.com or my website, brentbookwalter.com. You can also send me a message through there, and yeah, really eager and interested to explore and yeah, integrate it with the business professional space as much as athletes. I've done a little bit of work now in the corporate and business space as well, and every time I'm in a room with corporate and business high performers, I'm a little uncomfortable because it's not my natural habitat, but when I do take a moment to sit back and get some perspective and listen, I'm really amazed at how much overlap and corollaries there are between, yeah, the high performance environment of a world-class professional cycling team and then moving that into a boardroom or a team meeting or the business setting. There's a lot of overlap and it's exciting to learn those sort of new environments and new nuances as well.
Yeah, not only is there a lot of overlap, Brent, but the reality is, a business owner, you have decades and decades and decades, whereas, athletes, you have a small window of where you can really, optimize your performance and achieve success. Whereas, business owners can take these rules, whether they learned them in athletics or in business, and they can lead their organizations, they can lead their teams and translate those messages and spread those down as well. So it's very powerful what you're doing. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom here with the audience today. And last but not least, I'm excited to watch you again on the Tour de France coverage this coming summer. I think personally, I told you this, I think you're an awesome addition to the team out there. You're a natural on that. So when and where can we catch you this summer during the Tour de France?
Yeah, the whole Tour de France live and replay it on Peacock every day. So yeah, I'm part of the studio team. I'll be up in Stamford, Connecticut in the NBC Sports Studios. And yeah, they're early mornings. If you want to watch the Tour de France from the US in the summer, you're waking up early, but we're there every day. Yeah, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with my suit, with my makeup. Also not my natural habitat, but yeah, it's a really fun team to be part of. One of my favorite parts about racing the Tour de France as an athlete was this culmination and collective of world's best in team, everyone bringing their A game. Yeah. And I love that about NBC Sports and Peacock's broadcast of the tour is that I'm looking around in the studio and it's also world's best. Like the team behind the scenes is just immense and huge, talented, and they really they do well to make us look good, to make us sound good. We have everything that we need to really showcase and do the amazing world-class athletic performance justice. The Tour de France is just unlike anything else. So for anyone who hasn't watched it, it's a great summer to tune in. It'll be a one for the ages, and I'll be on air every day.
It is, and the only downside is my productivity gets cut by about 25% during the Tour de France.
It's true. It's a tough month for work.
it's hard not to watch. Fortunately, it's during the summer. But Brent, always good to see you, my friend. Hope to see you again out on the trails here sometime soon. And thanks again for joining us today.
Likewise, Chris, for having me.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.